Thank you for the introduction, and also to the organizers for the invitation to be here. A great pleasure to be able to discuss with you this important and somewhat challenging sort of relationship between technology and nature, including, of course, nature-based solutions. So, let me start off with some observations, and then we will have, of course, discussion here and some online participation. And towards the end, we'll come back to reflect on the answers that you put to the poll that we just saw. So, technology is, of course, a very broad concept, and there is no uniform relationship between technology and nature. What is technology? Well, of course, there are different kinds of definitions, but in principle, you would look at it as the capability that is granted by knowledge. You associate technology with humans and with the knowledge that we as humans have. In history, technology mostly really resulted from practical experience and practical efforts. Today we have, of course, still this going on, but today it's striking that science, research, and innovation are closely associated with the technical progress that we see. But there are different kinds of technical breakthroughs and technological development. Some technologies are incremental. There's a little bit of improvement day by day. Other technologies are disruptive. And we know all, we've seen them through history. Electricity, steam engine. Today, everybody's talking about digitalization, although that in itself carries very many different aspects. But the disruptive technologies, the general purpose technologies, they have that ability of bringing change on a massive scale. And we talk about technological revolutions, long curves in economic and social development as a result. Technology is, however, a confounding variable more than anything else. You can't really tell in any general sense whether technology is good or it's bad. It critically depends on how technology is put to use, for what purpose, controlled by whom. What are the intentions? What are the skills? And of course, there are institutions and governance, and then there are the ethical and social aspects that we cannot in any way look away from. So what about nature then, and the relationship between technology and nature? How has nature been a source of technical progress or new technology when we look at humans? Well, if you go back in the past, really, you see how technology was critically needed in many instances to control nature. We have to face it. This is a reality. There was the protection against the forces of nature, overcome the obstacles set by nature, exploit the resources that technology brings faster. And that in itself, we know, has led to catastrophic consequences on many occasions. We can think of, well, the whales in the oceans, for instance, many different species that were hunted down to extinction. Today, many speak of biomimicry, learning from technology, in having some sort of application of technology, and nature-based solutions, which is really also working with nature. Now, when we look at this kind of list, clearly there is an evolution here. There's a lot that has happened. But it doesn't mean that what we have on top of this list is gone. It's still there. It's still going on in parallel. And what is the most important? What's dominating? Well, maybe that comes back to the question we raised in the poll. What we definitely have today compared to the past is a very different situation when it comes to the relationship between humanity and nature. We used to live in a world that was, in a sense, empty. You could maybe, at least at times, or at least pretend to ignore the limitations that nature set up. It was like if it was endless. It's not the case anymore, we know that. We are like into a world that has become full in terms of our activities, our extraction, our pressures of nature. And we just have to take those limits into account. So, this is a new context. We have to move away from incremental, piecemeal evaluations of natural capital. They have run their course. Systemic impacts, the risk of breakdown of ecosystems, the resilience, and that versus that, the thresholds are very difficult to evaluate, but they have to be taken into account. Facing up to the real risk of exhaustion, that we are running out of the natural resources. So it means we have to value ecosystems and their services, and their interfaces. At the same time, we cannot just talk about the valuation. We have to find a way from moving from theory and discussion into practical application and real consequences in our behaviors and thereby in the economy. So what about realizing the solutions? So again, we have technology in there as a very important part. Now, in many respects, interwoven with what we can achieve in academy, in science, in innovation, but linking to practice and then that translation into what's happening in the marketplace. And the market, yes, it was observed already many times today. The market is not a diffuse thing outside there that doesn't relate to us. It's us. Of course, not just those next around you, not just individuals, huge organizations, multiple players, worldwide. It's a global market that we are living with today. Now, in the Urbinat project, which I sort of represent here, one of the younger, slightly younger than Connect Nature projects on nature-based solutions, we have put up a number of nature-based solutions in different categories. Some of them we've classified as technological. Others are rather territorial or participatory, and also social and solidarity economy. So they put very strong emphasis on the deprived areas and about inclusion, which is part of the title of Urbinat. And in Urbinat, we've tried to stress the linkages also between nature-based solutions. There is the concept of healthy corridors, and the participating cities here are, of course, the lead cities are really trying to implement healthy corridors linking nature-based solutions. But also the follower cities are developing plans and in some cases taking action. And also then with technology there, the digital part of course, the digital aspects and the instruments that are at hand there play a very important part. And that is not just in of course, what we look at as technological nature-based solutions. This is across the board in terms of supporting the implementation. And in our case, the focus has been very strongly on co-creation. What can be done in terms of using digital enablers to really have constructive participation by citizens, which we then see can have a lot of implications for how actually the nature-based solutions are applied and what value they will turn out to have. But digital enablers have many sort of opportunities and possibilities. There is, of course, the enormous speed and reach, the two-way interactivity, and the ability to tailor messages to meet with varying needs and motivations. But those very aspects, which have become part of our toolbox with technology, with digitalization, those features are also extensively applied for other purposes around the world. We know that in politics and for totally different purposes. And also when we apply digital enablers, there are risks in terms of the privacy, the mismanagement of data, the the domination of vested interests in the technical sphere. Hybrid solutions can be the answer in some cases, but critically there is the governance, the capacity building, the competencies that determine, what comes out of this productively and what are the risks. So this is a quite, again, wide landscape we're referring to. Here, the various aspects of digital tools, each one of them with their opportunities, but also with their risks. And when we think of technology and what's going to happen next, it's very hard for us to know where we're heading and what will be the outcome. We can look at the current trends, and if we do, it is a scary prospect, looking at the world we're living in. We heard earlier today here about the importance of not being pessimistic, looking at the opportunities and taking the action, and that's definitely the case. But we have to act on the issues. And technology there is a tool, a massively important tool that is evolving as we speak. And the question is, how are we going to use it? For what purpose? And where are we ending up? So I wanted to start with those maybe somewhat challenging observations. And I'm very glad now that we have some really good speakers with us, but not only in the room here, also on the following us on the screen. So I'll be very pleased here to introduce our first speaker. I'm not inviting any discussion at this point, because then we will never end, maybe. Let me turn to our first guest speaker here, who is Nadina Galle. Is that right? Nadina Galle? It's okay?
Hi there, can you hear me?
Yes, Nadina.
Okay, great.
Are we starting with Nadina here? Is that correct? Yeah. So Nadina, we're very happy to have you with us, and that you have a good connection here. And I understand, we haven't met, but I understand that you are an ecological engineer, technologist, entrepreneur, and you're dedicated to working with urban ecologists and planners, to applying various kinds of technologies to improve ecosystems. And of course here now, the subject, if I'm correctly informed, the Internet of the future, where you have a lot to say, I understand. So you're most welcome, and looking forward to hear your remarks.
Thank you very much for that kind introduction. Indeed, I'm going to be discussing the Internet of Nature, which in many cases is definitely attributed to what the future may look like, but we're going to be discussing the Internet of Nature today. So let me just share my screen. Can you see that okay?
It's fine.
Yes, great. Well, thank you so much for having me. It's a real pleasure to be able to join you in this hybrid fashion. The Connecting Nature project has been very special to me. Just to quickly introduce myself, the Connecting Nature project has been very special to me because really this is where a lot of the thinking around the Internet of Nature started, which we'll get into in just a second. But the Connecting Nature project is also with which I did my PhD and ultimately a short 6-month postdoc after that. And it really provided the foundation, both the academic support and the financial support and other resources to be able to conceptualize this concept of Internet of Nature, ultimately leading to a podcast as well, which I'll get to in a bit. But indeed, I finished my PhD in Ecological Engineering, based both out of University College Dublin and Trinity College Dublin, and ultimately doing my PhD fieldwork and lab work at the MIT Sensible City Lab, where I still hold a research affiliation today. And just to dive in quickly, what the issue is that I was able to address within the Connecting Nature project. So I think that for many years now, we've really seen the upcoming of two really distinct trends when it comes to the urban discourse. On the one hand, we see a trend towards nature-based solutions. This idea, of course, as all of you know, sitting at the Connecting Nature Impact Summit today, this idea that we can use greenery, we can use different elements, different natural elements to be able to solve some of cities' most pressing problems, whether that be heat or drought or lack of social cohesion, mental health concerns, stormwater interception, all of these different issues that we're facing, nature-based solutions can help. But on the other hand, we're seeing this massive technological revolution that is driving many of the innovations that we're seeing in cities, especially over recent years. Things like applying technologies to better understand our mobility systems, better understand where to park our car, better understand when certain waste bins need to be emptied over others. We've really we've really allowed every single sector to undergo some form of digital transformation. Yet I feel that there is still a gap between nature-based cities and smart cities. And I think this gap that we see in cities is one that echoes very much through the rest of society. And I think we've long often seen technology and nature as polar opposites, as enemies of one each other, as foes, almost as if technology is the antithesis of nature. And I think that kind of really harsh dichotomy is actually stifling progress in a lot of what we need to see progress in. And I think because of this dichotomy between the two, we've been very careful about letting technology come in to tarnish nature in some way, or to almost dirty it in some way. It feels like technology should not be allowed in the realm of nature. But through my concept, Internet of Nature, I argue for a better balance between these two. And the Internet of Nature stands for this framework, this concept, to not only apply and discover emerging technologies to better map, monitor, and understand our urban nature, but actually allow the technologies to better reconnect people to this urban nature as well. So really, I see the urban nature, or see the Internet of Nature, as having two distinct functions within urban ecology. On the one hand, what are the tools to better understand our ecosystems, so that way we may be able to better enhance the ecosystem services that we get out of these systems? And on the other hand, how can we actually use technology to better reconnect people to these ecosystems? I think that's a main issue that we're feeling today, whether that's as adults or whether that's in our youth. We've never been more disconnected from nature. And I ultimately believe that creating that empathy for nature is where a lot of the thinking, the nature-based thinking, may ultimately arise from. So what are the tools that we can actually facilitate these human-nature interactions? Well, I want to spend the next couple of minutes, short minutes that I have with you today, to just go over some very few examples. There's 150 odd examples within the Internet of Nature, different case studies that I've identified over the last couple of years through my research and that of my colleagues. So allow me to just share a couple of exciting examples that I've gotten the opportunity to work on over the last couple of years through the Connecting Nature project. One that's been really critical is the use of Internet of Things soil sensors. So in the very beginning of my PhD, I started working with a company called Treemania, which is based out of the Netherlands. And essentially what Treemania has done is developed wireless soil sensors that are connected to the cloud that can really measure a number of different soil health parameters, whether that's moisture, whether that's pH, salinity of the soil, oxygen in the soil, all of these different aspects that are critical to soil health. And the reason why I wanted to start here with this example is that I think we are, in general, grossly undervaluing just how important soil health is to be able to support the future greening agendas that we all have. And without healthy soil, we really cannot expect there to be healthy vegetation. So once soil health has been taken care of, and we're sure that the soil that we're growing these newly planted vegetation and trees in Then the question becomes, when and where do we water these trees? At least in the Netherlands, it's so that 15 to 20% of all newly planted trees don't survive their first year. And that is due to one of two problems. The one being a structural lack of watering, so underwatering, and the second being a structural overwatering. So essentially what's happening is we either are giving trees too little water, which is becoming an issue in obviously increasingly hotter and drier summers and springs. But in addition to that, we're actually overwatering in certain areas as well, as we're beginning to see more frequent and more intense, almost tropical rainstorms in areas that are definitely not the tropics. We are actually creating something known as hydrophobic soils, which means that these soils are no longer able to infiltrate the water that they should be having down to their root base. All that to say that we need more real-time information to understand how soil moisture is doing so that we can create more informed decisions about when and where to water. And the sensor allows us to do that. It allows us to understand where we need to water these trees. This information goes to a dashboard from which these tree managers can then make decisions. That's what we did in a project just outside of Maastricht, a Dutch city in the south of the Netherlands, where you can see here in this project, we had 1,000 linden trees that were planted on top of a tunnel. So because they're planted in what is essentially a metal shoebox, these trees have no real future of ever being able to reach something known as groundwater. So we need all the more reason to take extra care in terms of the watering of these trees. For these 1,000 trees, we are able to install just 3 soil moisture sensors. And the reason why I say this is because it's critical to understand that with this technology, and really any kind of technology, the goal is never the technology in itself. Technology should simply be seen as a tool to be able to achieve the outcome we want, which typically is developing more nature-rich communities for all of us to enjoy and to live in. So we're really proud of ourselves that we got away with, if you will, only these 3 sensors. The reason being is that we really only had to accommodate for different drainage patterns. After 5 years of this project now being in operation, I'm very proud to say that out of the 1,000 trees, only 1 tree has died. And that's something that we're incredibly proud of because, again, the typical industry standard is losing 15 to 20% of its trees.
Nadina, can you hear me?
Nadina? Did we lose Nadina? As technology sometimes.
She's disconnected.
Can happen. It was impressive that only 1 tree died. It was remarkable. Did she say out of how many? Out of 1,000. Mm-hmm. So if we don't have Nadina back now, maybe Nadina, are you there? I think maybe we'll come back to Nadina later, yeah, in the discussion and hear more about
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we hear you. Do you have a few more words?
Okay, great. Yes, so just the last couple of words to share here. Just about another example about how you can use the soil sensors is that we are actually developing a tweeting tree kit, which is a way to actually get the public engaged in this work as well. So having translated to rules that can then be translated to tweets is another project that we're developing in the center of Liverpool, which is going live in just a couple of months. And just the last example that I'll leave you with here is that through the Connecting Nature project, I was able and encouraged to start what initially started out as a 10-part series to share some of these Internet of Nature stories. That 10-part series has now grown to 4 seasons of the Internet of Nature podcast. Season 4 is launching this upcoming Wednesday on May 4th. So I encourage you to check that out if you're interested in hearing more about the example I mentioned and many, many other examples about how different innovators are using and applying technologies to build healthier, healthier, smarter, and ultimately greener communities for all. So I apologize for the connection issues, and I look forward to reconnecting in the discussion. Thank you.
So very useful illustrations, examples of what technology can achieve. I wanted to put just one very brief question to you. We don't have much time in between, but the digital divide is something we're all aware of. And sometimes that digital divide can broaden, what we already see in terms of big inequality out there. Do you see any risk with your programs and so on that you bring some people even further along while others might be alienated when you apply technology, and how do you counter that?
Absolutely, it's a danger that we need to be aware of. But in general, I feel that the digital divide is something that instead of growing, I actually believe that that gap is closing rapidly. And I mean, there's many, many other examples that I didn't get a chance to talk to, but one of the most engaging is what's happening in the global south. There are, for example, very exciting examples coming out of Sierra Leone in Freetown, where they've actually, in many areas in Sierra Leone, unfortunately, as is the case in other countries, you're more likely to own a phone than you are even to have access to sanitation, which I think is showing just how rapidly infiltrating these technologies are. They've managed to come up with a tree growing scheme where they actually every tree has a certain ID attached to it, and when you take care of that tree, you can actually get mobile payments sent to your phone to be able to compensate you for those efforts. So I think, yes, digital divide, we have to be careful of it, we have to be wary of it, but in general, I think it's something that's closing fast, and I see a bright, technologically driven future ahead of us, but one that optimizes for urban nature at its core.
Thank you. Very interesting. And obviously, this is a big topic. We are living in a divided world in many respects, but maybe technology can help close the gap, or it's widening it. So let's come back to it. Now we have the pleasure of having with us also Dr. Nicola Andrighetto. And Nicola, he is one of the unit directors of ETIFOR 3. He's a project manager of a number of different projects, and he has been particularly engaged in, we hear about this again, about forest resources, and also worked on the European timber market. So maybe we have some connections here with the comments and observations by Dr. Nadina. I understand that your focus here will be on the blockchain. So very much looking forward to hear about that.
Yes.
Welcome.
Good afternoon, everybody. Can you see my screen? I hope that, yes? Okay. Good morning, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Nicola Andrighetto. Yes, I work for ETIFOR, and I'm here to try to analyze the use of blockchain for traceability in a sustainable food supply chain. So, as you already said, I work for ETIFOR. ETIFOR is a spin-off of Padova University. It means that every day we try to transfer scientific knowledge into concrete solution. So, what are the main contents of my presentation? I try to describe the main results of a project. A project is called Digital for Wood. And later I try to describe what is the blockchain and what are the forest certification and the role of blockchain in a forest certification. At the end also, I try also to define the company's perception on blockchain. So the background of my presentation. My presentation will present the result of a project. The project is Digital for Wood. Main partner of the project are ETIFOR and FSC Italy. And the objective of this project was the analysis of the technical feasibility of the integration of blockchain technology in the FSC certification process. This Digital for Wood was developed in the context of another Horizon project. The project was DIVA. This is DIVA is a Horizon 2020 project. DIVA is an acronym of boosting innovative digitech value chains for agri-food, food, forestry, and environment. So I think it's important to start my presentation to define what is the blockchain. Blockchain is a record-keeping digital technology. It means that it registers transaction in the digital logbook that can be changed. It means that the data in a blockchain cannot be changed. It's immutable data. In a blockchain, the transactions are recorded through a consensus protocol. For example, if I want to add something in a blockchain, I can create a new block, and this block can add in a blockchain through a consensus protocol. And once this block is in a blockchain, it's integrated blockchain, this block is not immutable, it's not changeable. At the other hand, I want to explain what are the forest certification. Forest certification are, of course, market mechanisms that are voluntary tools for promoting the responsible forest management. And it's important because forest certification allow us to understand the label of sustainable products. Forest certification are based on a process where an independent third party, that is certification body, can assess the quality of forest management in relation to a set of requirements. At international level, there are two main certifications, FSSC and PFC. Digital for Wood, this project has been developed with FSSC, so I'm going to focus on FSSC process. So we have seen that if we want a product with, of course, FSSC label or PFC label, but as I already said, I prefer to focus on FSSC, and on FSSC, I have to guarantee that these products derive from a forest that is managed, this is responsible managed. It means that all the supply chain should be certified. Why? Because all the actors that is involved in the supply chain should be separate material, certified material and not certified material. It means that all the actors should be certified according to FSSC chain of custody certification. So we can understand that this is a long process, but only with this process we can have the guarantee that the FSSC label is something valid. So nowadays this system is based on paper. It means that every certified company must keep paper records of the quantity of certified products and not certified products, and also the auditors, that the certification body, should check in detail these paper records. So the system based on paper is, of course, appear open to frauds and expensive for certification body and for certification. There is in this system, there is the necessity to find innovative instruments to increase the transparency and to reduce certification costs. Of course, blockchain can change this system. In fact, blockchain can guarantee the traceability along all the supply chain. And as we know, with the blockchain, we can have a reduction of cost and also of fraud risk. And also there can be, in general, an increase of stakeholder confidence. But in the context of project, we try to understand what the company think about blockchain. First of all, most of companies at the moment in 2020 don't use blockchain. So there is a limited knowledge on blockchain at the moment. And also, I think it's very interesting, half of companies are reluctant to use blockchain. Why? We try to understand the company are not so confident blockchain. So for that, we we interviewed certification bodies, that is the checkers, and they say that among the main problems that companies are reluctant to enter their data, their commercial data, such as volume of their material and its origin on a platform as blockchain. So there is important the blockchain and also all the system of this system, traceability system. There is a necessity to guarantee privacy of this company. And also, there is a lack of compatibility between company internal management and blockchain implementation. But I think the first point is the most important point. Very often we talk about blockchain, but we can't understand the real problem of the companies to guarantee the privacy of their data. However, in the context of the project, we have presented our idea of blockchain to FSSC, so to the certification system. So if we can have this value chain, we can suppose that the company can transmit their data to certification body. The certification body, of course, can be different, but the certification body can receive this data and can collect this data in a storage, in an online storage, for example. Certification body can issue the certification to the companies, but the certification body must protect data about the companies. For the companies, it's important for the companies that this data this data should be protected, and only at upper level we can suppose that there can be a blockchain where the certification body can add data about the certification, so the main data of the certification of the company, and this kind of data will constitute a block of this famous blockchain. But we want to clarify that only FSSC can have access to this blockchain. Why? Because I want to repeat that the company prefer to have their data protected. So this is a not real public blockchain, but is a private blockchain where the information is stored in a global system. But through this system, we can understand that all the supply chain, all the value chain in the context of FSSC can be monitored by FSSC. So is a transparent system. So at the end, we think that blockchain can have the potential to transforming the chain of custody system, so the traceability of certain value chain more trustworthy and cheaper for companies and also for the controllers, for the checkers. But are the companies ready to implement really these blockchain technologies? How to preserve data privacy integrity? Our conclusion is that only a sort of private blockchain can guarantee the data privacy and the data integrity. So in this private blockchain, only selected actors can join the blockchain network. Public blockchain, where anyone can participate in the network, maybe is a sort of dream, because the transparency sometimes is not easy. The concept of is not easy to integrate the concept of transparency in a commercial world. So another problem that I like to underline during that emerged during the interview with the companies, that if we integrate blockchain in a system, of course, there is a loss of job opportunities for the future, because there is a risk of loss some professional skills. For example, the checkers or the auditors, the professional will be lost. The professional as auditors. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. That was a pretty comprehensive illustration of opportunities as well as challenges. And those opportunities seem not to be fulfilled at this point. Could you just in just 3 words or 1 sentence, what is sort of needed in order for those opportunities to be realized while managing the downsides? Are we talking about competencies, skills, attitudes, or institutional development?
Yeah, competencies, but also we have to say that we have to know the commercial world. I mean, some behavior of the companies sometimes is very far from what we need, what we want. So we want transparency, of course, of the supply chain, but it's not easy to implement that in the real world.
Okay, thank you very much. So time is running, and now we have the the privilege here of coming back to connecting nature core activities. There have been various tools and technologies developed in the project. Will you go to the poll now first, for the first? Yeah, so there are various interesting tools in the project, and we're coming back to them in a second then. And now you will run the, yes. Okay. So we have a pretty optimistic starting point for this discussion. Let's see if we end up then. Will we have any poll further on? Yeah. Right. Yes. So you have a opportunity, the chance to reevaluate, and we'll see then if you become more or less optimistic. Okay. So here. Will we see the? This is the next poll. We will see your screen now. So you will not disclose this now? This is just open now. We will discuss at the end. All right. Yeah. Okay. So we'll continue now. Yes. Thank you. So now we come to these major tools that have been developed for connecting nature, and there are 2 that really are at the center here. It's on the one hand the Connecting Nature Enterprise platform. And then it's the CO impact. Co-impact, you call it. Yeah, okay. So we'll learn more about that soon. We'll start with the Connecting Nature Enterprise platform. And here we have a pleasure of having with us Isobel Fletcher. She's the acting CEO of Horizon NUA. And now we'll hear more about the platform. Welcome.
Thank you for that introduction, Thomas, and it's great to be here. For those Connecting Nature partners who are very familiar with what I'm going to say what I've said to you before, pretend you've never heard this before. And for those of you that are going to hear about the Connecting Nature Enterprise platform who are here in the room for the first time, and those joining us online, I'm delighted to be able to present to you a very brief overview of one of the innovations that we have, I suppose, co-created within the project over the last couple of years as part of, I suppose, which came out of a lot of the research work that Esme and Siobhan led on the whole sort of enterprise development and support within the project as part of the framework. Now the technology is letting me down. Where do I change the slides? Is there a clicker? Oh, you have the clicker. Okay, so like I said, I'm not going to give a very in-depth demonstration, but I would invite you to go and visit the Connecting Nature Enterprise platform at the domain above. To the best of our knowledge, this is the world's biggest community for nature-based enterprises. From the research that we have done, we firmly believe that we were among the first out of the starting blocks to develop this online virtual platform to bring nature-based enterprises together. Why did we do that? Couple of reasons really, and I'm going to take you through them. One from a market perspective, and we heard earlier on in another session from another sister project, Unilab, I think, whose research established that cities in particular have experienced quite, a challenge in finding skilled and experienced suppliers of nature-based solutions. And I think that finding has been echoed by our own Connecting Nature cities, when they have been trying to implement their own nature-based solutions. Another challenge from a market perspective is that financing nature-based solutions is challenging, but especially in the long term, that a lot of the focus when it comes to financing nature-based solutions is sometimes on the planning and definitely on the capital investment, getting the thing built and implemented in the first place, and not a lot of consideration goes into the long-term stewardship and management of the nature-based solution. And this is an area where nature-based enterprises can really come in and collaborate with city authorities and really help them address this issue. And then thirdly, I suppose, it's this growing investment and market demand for nature-based solutions that is currently underway. And you can see here in the graph that our current expenditure is estimated to be in the region of 113 billion on nature-based solutions. Most of it, as you can see, funded by the public sector. But under the terms of the Green Deal, we're being pushed, that there's a big push towards tripling that investment in nature-based solutions. And in order to do that, you need the suppliers of those solutions to be able to deliver for the buyers. But, it's not just a market demand that drove us to look at creating the enterprise platform. There's also a number of issues coming from the enterprises themselves. So we define, or I suppose, again, at an earlier workshop, Siobhan was saying, I suppose, Connecting Nature couldn't take the credit, I think, for defining a nature-based enterprise almost, due to the research that Esme led on. And nature-based enterprises we have defined, and again, it's, I suppose, a definition that is still under discussion and is open to, I suppose, different people feeding into it and commenting on it. But currently, we define nature-based enterprises as enterprises who use nature sustainably as a core element of their product and service offering. For those of us here in the room and online, nature-based solutions may not be that relatively new to us anymore. We've been working in the area here in Connecting Nature for at least 5 years. But in many other cities, many other countries, many other different parts of the world, nature-based solutions are still quite new, and I think nearly for all of us, the market is still in that early stage of development, okay? So what we really wanted to do with the platform was to create that visibility for nature-based enterprises, to be able to help buyers of nature-based solutions identify those skilled suppliers that are out there and that are able to tender for business, so to make those connections and to facilitate those connections. Some of the sectors, the industry sectors, aren't that well connected. There are some excellent connections at national level in some more established enterprise sectors, but there aren't throughout the different levels or the different sectors within the nature-based enterprise community, a large number of industry networks. And for us then it was important to connect the enterprises together to help them facilitate those industry communities and networks. And then I think through our engagement with enterprises, it became very apparent that there was a need for knowledge, training and skills development. So the heart of the Connecting Nature Enterprise platform are really our 10 communities. And you can see them there. We have communities supporting nature-based solutions, across a whole range, from the smart technologies that is led by Nadina, who we heard from a few minutes ago, to community engagement, health and well-being. But what for us is so important as sort of the managers of the platform is that we don't manage these communities. They're managed by industry leaders. We call them our community ambassadors. So they're all experts in their field, and it is they that are driving the growth of these communities and the networking in these communities. And we're really lucky and glad to have, I think, 8 of the community ambassadors joining us here in Genk. So you'll be able to meet them over the next for the rest of the evening and tomorrow, and get to learn more about the communities and the activities that they're involved in. But like I say, you know, they have been driving the agenda in terms of developing the capacity building webinars and workshops and creating the networking and so on within each of these communities. Just to give you an idea, since the launch of the Connecting Nature Enterprise platform, just I suppose about almost 18 months ago, we now have over 2,000 users of the platform on a regular basis, and over 350 nature-based enterprises on our platform. And you can see we are extending our reach globally. We have a heavy European concentration, naturally enough, but we're delighted to see, you know, membership coming from right across the globe. And really, it's, you know, it's about facilitating that connection between the buyers and the suppliers, and enabling both enterprises and other organisations like cities, like developers, research academics, industry organisations, to post up news and opportunities. Because one of the things I think that we found in more recent research that we've done with our users is that access to knowledge, access to tools and courses is really important to help, you know, I suppose, improve capacity, improve skills, build confidence. And we've been working on developing that whole resource initiative on the platform more recently, sort of market reports, market sector reports, and research is there's a hunger out there for that. So it's great to see, you know, so much research coming from projects, not just in Connecting Nature, but within our, you know, sibling projects, and, you know, within the new projects that the platform is going to be involved in as it extends beyond Connecting Nature. So. That's the whistle stop. I just want to finish off with some testimonials that some of the nature-based enterprises who feature on the platform have provided to us. And Gerardo Gonzalez, who I think is in the audience, from Bioazul, based in Malaga in Spain. And Gerardo is also the community ambassador for the water management community on the platform. But, you know, thanks to the platform, they have made a great connection and are about to embark on this new initiative in Malaga with another member on the platform called Bioautonomy. And Kimia Vita, who you're going to meet tomorrow, because Kimia won a pitch competition at the recent Nature of Cities. But for Kimia, what was important was that they had the opportunity to become a member of a like-minded community of people. You know, people actively wanting to work with nature. And that in itself is very, very important to be able to, as I say, to connect. So connecting nature, connecting communities, connecting enterprises. So just to finish off, again, just inviting you to take your time and have a look around and sign up to the platform if you haven't already. But I'll hand back to Thomas now.
Can you hear me? So that's pretty impressive development, and I hear that you're also very optimistic about where it's heading. Is this sustainable, and where would you like to see it, you know, be in, let's say, 5-10 years?
Well, yeah, no, we firmly believe it's sustainable. In the sustainability of the platform. I think for us, over the last 18 years, we've definitely, you know, provided proof of concept. We see the membership growing all the time. We see the demand. And what's been really interesting and reaffirming is that other people are recognizing that too, and they're recognizing the potential of the platform. And this is why we're being invited in, or the platform, I should say, is being, you know, earmarked as being one of these tools that are going to help in the, I suppose, that has a real role in supporting the growth and delivery of nature-based solutions. You know, not just at a project level, but I think at a global level. And being involved in these new Horizon Europe projects is going to help us sustain that. But, you know, I think we also have the opportunity to look at expanding our offer and our business model and looking at things like, you know, professional development being rolled out through the communities and linking in with one of our other initiatives like Urban by Nature and jointly delivering a number of capacity building measures, both, I suppose, online and in person.
Thank you very much. Very interesting, and I'm sure this will be useful in many different activities. Yeah, thank you. Okay, so now we have the pleasure of hearing from Gillian Dick, and she's an urban planner at the Glasgow City Council. And together with, of course, the other colleagues in the project, she has developed this tool called the Co-Impact. Co-Impact, right. And very importantly, it's open source, and yeah, there is very strong impact assessment of MBS here. So, welcome.
Right, you can see I'm disrupting before I start, so I'm just going to keep disrupting. I was going to do a talk and just wing it, but they are going to show a video. But before I do that, I'm going to ask you to do 2 things for me, or maybe 3, using the technology that you have. So, if you have a phone or a computer with you, and you have something like a Google or a browser of your choice, at some point when you get bored with what we're showing you, put in co-impact.app. That's coimpact.app. That will get you to CoImpact. You can play with it. I'm going to do a demonstration there. The second thing, I'll ask you 3 things. Second thing I'm going to ask you to do is when you go outside and you breathe a bit of fresh air, take a picture of a tree. Any tree will do. Then tweet it or Instagram it to Every Tree Tells a Story. So at Every Tree, or Every Tree Tells a Story on Instagram, or hashtag Every Tree Tells a Story. It's another little innovation that's coming out of Connecting Nature, inspired by Melbourne and their tree stories. We're now working with Novel Echo, as well as some of our colleagues in Strathclyde. So it would be nice to get a Twitter storm of trees, which would be good. And your final thing, once you've found Twitter, take a picture. You can take any old picture you like in this room now, embarrassing pictures, selfies, whatever. Tweet it to hashtag Connecting Nature Summit, because you've all gone to sleep and I was told to tweet, and I've tweeted this morning, and there's at least 50 of you in this room and at least 20 of you must be able to tweet, so please do. Right, can I say roll video? Yes.
Developed within the Connecting Nature project, Co-Impact is a decision support tool allowing officers and cities to create impact assessment plans for their nature-based solutions projects. The main objective is to make the process of building a baseline and impact assessment plan straightforward and simple for anyone who wishes to do so, with the final report providing advice around suitable methodologies based on scale and project characteristics. Rania Sermpesi, GIS analyst with Glasgow City Council, takes us on a short demonstration of how the Co-Impact tool works in practice.
So as you can see, this is the actual website that we have created for Co-Impact. I'm going to start the tool just so that I can show you. The tool is not for commercial purposes, and so once you have confirmed that, you're welcome to use the tool. So it starts off with the environmental benefits. So again, this is kind of the goals. We named them benefits, but it's the kind of thing that you want to achieve. So because the environmental ones were quite a lot, they are divided between different kind of subtopics. So you've got climate resilience, water management, you've got green space management as well. But basically you need to just think what you want to achieve and then just select the benefits that you think are applicable to your project. I always give the example of a food growing space, a food growing garden, and looking at what we want to achieve through that. So say that in terms of environmental, we want to reduce flood risk. We also want to, in terms of green space management, say that we want to increase ecosystem service provision, and we want to, in this case, because we're creating a community garden, we want to increase the number of community gardens in the city. And the kind of similar approach is taken for the rest of the topics. So in health and well-being, say that in the food growing space that we're creating, we want to improve mental health and we want to improve physical health, and maybe you want to improve nutritional habits as well. So the next topic is social cohesion. And again, with our food growing space, we're interested to improve the perceived safety in the area. And the last one is economic. So as part of our food growing space, we actually want to maybe upskill people and we want to make them gain employment. And that's where the tool does that first thing, where it basically translates these goals or benefits into the indicators that have been created as part of the Connecting Nature project. The indicators are divided between core and feature. This is something that was created as part of Connecting Nature to describe the indicators that were kind of essential to any project, which would be the core indicators that are looking at this kind of topic. And then the feature ones are applicable to projects depending on the scale and type of project that you're looking at as well. So as you can see, the indicators are divided between the different categories. So these are all the environmental ones. Then you've got health and well-being, social cohesion, and then you've got the economic side of things as well. So that's the first stage of the tool, the co-impact tool. There are actual synergies between indicators, between the different themes as well. So this part of the tool will be able to kind of remind you that you've got to think about that multi-themed aspect of things. So that's really it. The only final step that you've got here is you're being asked where your project is based. We want to see, for our own auditing purposes, who is using this, where people are using it from. So in this case, I'm going to write down Glasgow. So I'm just going to download that and just going to open the report that has been produced. So this is something that you'll be able to download and have access to indefinitely. It gives you all these indicators that we selected before. And the most important part is this bit here, which basically opens up another document. So that's per indicator. And it gives you some information about that specific indicator, how you can actually go about and collect this data, analyze things, and make sure that your evidence is solid. We are aware that this whole process is actually, it doesn't stop the bit where you need a technical person to find the data for you and do the analysis. However, the whole point of this is that it raises awareness and it gets people thinking about impact and the fact that you need to make sure you've got the evidence to back your assumptions rather than the kind of more traditional methods of having anecdotal evidence that something is working or it's not working. So this allows you to start thinking about that and raises awareness.
So that saved me doing it, which is good. Hopefully some of you were playing with that while that was on. The one bit of advice I would give you is don't just put Malaga, because if you're using it more than once and you print off your impact assessment, you'll be going eeny, meeny, miny, mo. So put Town Hall Malaga. I'm just picking Malaga because I can kind of see Spanish people in my eye view, which is because the lights, I can see you, I can't see anybody else. So put Town Hall Malaga and Big Park Malaga, because when you print out your reports, you want to be able to differentiate between them, just so that you know where it is. It doesn't, as Rania says, stop you having to have somebody as a tech person, but you can go to them and go, I need this data, have you got it? And if they've got it, and they should have a map of your area, and they should hopefully have the population density, and they might know where the open space is, and they can give you some of that data. But it also means you can then go to them, can you go to our health boards and get the health data, and can we go and speak to the universities to get the other data, or do we need to go and buy this data? So hopefully it will help, because most of the time, most people go, oh crap, I haven't got that data, so I can't count that, and we stop. Bite-sized pieces, go find the data you've got, use it, sweat the data, make it work for you, and make sure that people that you work with don't create data once and then put it in the bin, because an awful lot of people create the data and then they throw it away. We still have in Glasgow people creating maps for us of property ownership. They create it on GIS, they print it out as a PDF, and then they delete the GIS file and give us a photocopy. That's useless. So yeah, I'll stop there.
So So thank you very much for bringing this to our attention about co-impact and also giving us some assignments here to follow up on it. So are you happy with where you are with the instrument? Is it used in the way that you would have liked to? And what's next?
I'm on. Yeah, we only launched it a month ago. We want people to play with it. We would love to automate the data so that you don't have to go and ask a GIS person, that actually there's a bit of build that needs to be done the next stage for any community, that when you hit to get your impact plan, it actually creates that dashboard for you, so you see that data. We haven't quite got to that yet. But if it improves conversations, and what we accidentally discovered, it's another great tool for a conversation with a community, because you can sit down with a community and have it on the screen and go, okay, talk to me about your project. What outcomes do you want for your project? And what it also does is a good nudge behavior. So if you're an economist and all you want to do is tick the economy box, it won't let you. It will nudge you and say, are you sure that's all it'll do? Are you sure it's not helping the social community or the biodiversity? And it will suggest solutions. That's because we've worked with all the lovely people in the project and we've mapped cause and effect. So you can't just ignore things, it will nudge you. You can ignore it then and not tick the box, but it'll nudge you again just to see if you've really thought about it before you get to print off your report. And it will nudge you about governance as well. And I would say yes and say, who am I talking to, why am I talking to them? So you can't get away with just going, I'm only doing this for the money.
So there's quite a bit of artificial intelligence in there.
Yes, with a lot of help of the mapping, but yeah, it's all been built to kind of nudge, so you can't just do what you would do in the past and say, I only know how to count how much money I'm spending on it, so that's all I'm going to count. Because it'll automatically come back and go, well, if it's a nature-based solution, then you need to look at the health of the community or the health of the ground, or you need to think about the biodiversity or something like that.
Thanks a lot. Well, the clock is of course ticking, but don't run out to talk to the trees yet, because we've been told that we can draw over a little bit. We started a little late, so we can draw over slightly more. So I hope you can bear with that. And now we have poll results, is that right? Okay, so overwhelming improved data collection and evaluation analytics, and a bit of enabling nature positive economy and enable citizen participation, and less about making markets work and governance. Okay, very interesting. So we have a little bit of time then for some discussion here. I wanted to check whether do we still have Nadina and Nicola with us, or on the line? Yes? Okay.
Yes,
excellent. This one has tied there. All right, great. So then there is a chance here to pose questions or comments or challenges to all four speakers and to the panel. Can we hear from the audience? We have over here. Yes, please. Will you go with the mic here, or yeah? Okay, great. It's coming. It's over here. Oh, right.
Thank you. Is it on? Yes. Okay. Hi. Maybe my question is a bit more philosophical, but I think we also had quite some inspiring talks throughout the day. And I wanted to come back to the talk that we just had this morning on natural intelligence, and how that sometimes artificial intelligence is seen as a bad thing. And in particular, in this talk, we're talking about technology. So I was wondering if you think that's one of the major challenges between connecting nature-based solutions and technology, and how could you improve that in that sense? Not for a specific speaker in per se, but who would like to tackle that. Yeah. Thanks.
Nadina, would you like to answer? Is Nadina there?
I can give. I'll fill, and I think I don't know whether Nicola had something as well. It depends on what type of AI you're after. So, for instance, we need information about how frequently people use open spaces and how they use them. And working with Glasgow University's big data set, we've managed to get access to the Google data. Now, I don't know whether anybody's noticed, but if you've got your location on at the minute, and we were told to do that in Scotland for our COVID tracker, if you go to Google and hit update, it will tell you how far you've walked, how far you've stepped. It told me yesterday that I flew. And it knew exactly where I flew from and exactly where I flew to. It knew how far I walked, how long I was on the train, and how long I wandered around Dublin Airport. So, yeah, there is useful information there if we can get it. So, in theory, you should be able, we're using that open source data to track how people are walking around parks. You can then apply it to AI to kind of get patterns. So if you can figure out patterns, you can then figure out when is a park going to be busy or when is a street going to be busy. And you can actually start saying to people, if they want to avoid crowds, you can tell them when not to go. Or if you want to be with a crowd, you can tell them to be. But there's other uses for AI that I think kind of, to a certain extent, what Nadina was doing with the soil thing was AI, because it was telling them when those plants, those trees needed water.
AI is, of course, already all around us, and it's going to keep moving. It's a question of how. There can be, various driving forces.
I don't know whether Nicola online wants
Nicola
to...
online?
Yeah. Have you got anything to add
Yes,
to that, Nicola?
I wasn't present this morning, so I don't know. Of course, I don't know in detail what you have said this morning about the technology, but of course, we know that the online storage of data can have some risk because we can have a lack of our privacy, of our personal data, not only commercial data, but also personal data. And we know the risk that we can have for this kind of technology.
Yes, thank you very much for that. Let us collect a few more sort of remarks or questions. We have one here, over here.
Yes, thank you. I had quite of how it's called, some controversy here, because Mr. Nicola Andrighetto, so he promoted the blockchain, but not the open one, but a little bit closed one, because of the private interests, let's say, not the private data, but the private companies would like to have this this way, which is understandable and the perfect. But on the other hand, we have a co-impact tool which starts with the notion that private companies are excluded actually from using this tool. The point is that actually, let's say I'm from the private company and we are working for the public authorities, and we would like to use this tool to develop the municipalities' tools. So, and I would like to refer to call from Mr. Jan Rotmans, the professor from Erasmus University. He said the power of people and power of including private, non-private, public, should not we lift those restrictions? Like, I understand the reasoning for both, let's say, the restrictions, but should not we remove kind of any type of community out of the discussion? So what are your thoughts about? Is not more transparency better and more access to the tools better? Thank you. So question is, of course, to Gillian and Nicola.
Yes, but let us first see if there are a few more.
Yes.
And then we'll take maybe they connect. We have here, Siobhan.
Yeah, it's on, sorry. I'm just going back to the question of the digital divide that you raised earlier. And I know Nadina said that, yeah, and I completely agree that in terms of the global south, that this access to technology is improving. But in relation to the comment Mamuka just made about connecting people, I wonder, is there a real divide between generations? And is that a different aspect of the technology divide that we need to address, and how can we address it?
I can give you a living example in Scotland at the minute. We delayed our census for a year. So our census close date was the end of this month, and we've only got 75% return. They did it all as a digital. They were sending a letter with a connection online. They didn't send any hard copies. You had to physically request it. There's now a whole load of news stories saying, well, maybe they should have sent out the hard copies as well and dealt with the ones that were being binned, because when they sent hard copies, people didn't miss that thing. Whereas sending a very small letter in a very slim envelope, people may well have junked it. So yeah, there are some real-world examples of assumptions that people are making about who understands technology and who can get at it. And we need to work with people to understand, and we need to make sure that we have equity of access to all that we're doing, which is where some of these tools work quite well in communities, where the people don't actually need to boot up the app or the thing. They just need to turn up at the village hall and somebody else will talk them through it. And all they know is they're having a nice cup of tea and a conversation. And if you want me to answer Manuka's very quickly, if you look at co-impact, it says tick the box for non-commercial use. We're saying that because if any company wants to use it, they can, but they shouldn't be charging to take a client through co-impact. What they should be charging for is plugging the data gap if that's what their client or customer wants them to do. So we've said very strongly to some of our colleagues who are working in drainage, who said, can we get the Arabs of this world to use it? I said, yeah, but they can't charge you for it. They can charge for the added value they create once they discover what the added value is going to be.
Okay. Yes.
Sorry, I have one more question. I've been nominated the note taker for this session, and I need an answer to this one, please. Okay. What are your main recommendations from each member of the panel for future research, development, or policy in relation to technology as an enabler for nature-based solutions?
The main, the main policy recommendations?
The main recommendations for research, development, or policy. So you have a choice. I suppose if you had one recommendation, you asked Isobel earlier about where she sees in 5 years' time. So for each of you, what needs to happen in 5 years' time to really make technology, how would you say it, fully reap the benefits of technology and realize the potential of technology?
Siobhan, that's an excellent question for the final comments. Let's see now if there is any more question here, and then because we also still have the transparency question here to respond to, because we don't have so much time. So,
thank you. Hey, yeah. Do you think there is scope for the automation or machine learning in the kind of design phase of green infrastructure for nature-based solutions that may be able to kind of you may be able to like automate the allocation of green spaces, or for spaces that fit the criteria for the planting of trees, or for particular nature-based solutions?
I would say yes, but you need to get people who work like me as a planner to remember that maps are their key, and you need to ask the map, and in order to ask the map you need to know what your parameters. So I've spent an awful long time in the last 6 months saying to people, if you want to plant trees within 500 meters of the 15% most deprived communities, and you want to plant it on flat, vacant and derelict land that's slightly contaminated, tell us, because that's the data sets we can pull into a map, and then we can ask the map to run those questions and it will identify sites. You can't do that if you don't know what your outcomes are. If you can identify your outcomes, you can then ask the data. if you could automate co-impact, it would run that data automatically and present you with your opportunity sites. What we have at the moment is it's all in people's heads, and they close their eyes and they go, eeny, meeny, miny, mo, we'll go there, 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 and there. Or they go and do a guesstimate of it. So the quicker we can automate it and get people used to the fact that it's all about a space and a place, and stop them gathering data on Excel spreadsheets and access databases and PDFs in the back of a fag packet, and actually put it on a spatial map that you can also have a video, or you could have me talking, or somebody else talking, or you could have a reminder of things, and you can just click on somewhere and it'll tell you everything, the better. The problem is, over the last 25 years, and I'll say this as a planner, when digital plans came in, somewhere in most councils they thought it was a fancy drawing tool. They binned the plan chests and took the plans away from the people that needed to ask the maps. So they took away the tracing paper and the layering, and if you can do that digitally and you can automate it and leave the analytics to analysing the answers to the humans, that would be amazing.
So let me just also add that clearly there is a lot of scope for that, but involving people also on their terms is very important. And this is because the whole point is not just, you know, the data exercise. It's really the engagement by people, to have people feel ownership. And here the matter of inclusion is very important. So we have to be mindful of how we use technology in this context. Now, time is running, so wanted to go to a last round of comments here. We have had several questions, including transparency. I wanted to ask Nicola to begin with, if you can answer that question, and also if you have any other remark on the others, including the question here about what's most important for the future of technology to fulfilling the potential of technology in terms of research or market or policy.
Yeah, I think for a private sector, I think it's important the involvement of the companies, but not only the big companies, but also the small companies. Small companies, in fact, they are jealous of their commercial data. And if we want to involve them, if we want to transform the value chain in a transparent value chain, we have to find a way to involve these small companies, small importers, for example, of wood. I think at this moment there are no problems to make transparent the value chain of very big companies, because they are so powerful also to their suppliers. I think the challenge for this process is the involvement of small companies and small actors in the value chain, if we talk about transparency in the value chain.
Okay, thank you very much. Nadina, do you have some summarizing comments?
The connection dropped again, unfortunately, so I missed the last part.
So you didn't hear the questions? Let me repeat. There has been at least one question raised to all of you about what is most important for fulfilling the potential of technology going forward here in terms of either research or market or policy.
I'm sorry, it's coming across all jarbled.
Okay, Nadina, I think we have to leave you then for the sake of technology here and talk about that separately later.
I can go in. So I would say it's when you create data, don't assume that you're the only one that uses it or needs it. Make sure people are aware that you have created data. So if I just say cause and effect, so whilst I might not be able to have individual data about somebody's health and well-being, I can use prescription data that's anonymized for an area to tell me how much depression is in the area, so how sad people are feeling, and maybe then go and have conversations with communities about how they feel about the perceived safety in their area, and we can track, if we improve an area, whether the amount of antidepressants prescribed is going down or whether the amount of asthma medicine is going down. It will give us a cause and effect. So I think outside the box, Tell people you're collecting things, because they may well be able to use that data in a way you didn't think about.
Thank you. Isobel?
I think from an enterprise perspective, and certainly a lot of the enterprises that we're working with, it's about how do they connect with each other and how do they find the support to help develop their capacities and build their businesses, you know. So it could be investors, or it could be technology, or people to help them get their product from prototype into the market. So, you know, so when you're starting up, there's so many boxes you have to tick, and how can you bring all that together in a way that kind of demystifies and uncomplicates that process for them? I don't know if that's possible or not, but I think something like the platform could potentially help them do that through the communities and building.
Okay, thank you very much, and we are approaching the end here. Let me make a couple of observations and comments. I believe one of the great contributions of technology actually is the ability to reach out much more widely, and also to tailor, to adapt to different purposes. There on your question regarding transparency, is that right in the blockchain here in that industry context to keep it private, whereas on many other occasions it's really about transparency, which is important. You have both sides of the coin, and technology actually provides you with the ability to do much more than what you could do in other ways, at least when you look at the potential for the scaling. But really tailoring means that in order to do that right, you have to be very serious about your audience and about the purposes. And technology is extensively used for other purposes than what we're discussing here. So I think in that context, it is very important for this kind of community to take technology very seriously and look at the opportunities. It's not about forgetting the risks and the downsides, because they are very real on privacy and in so many ways. And on Shaban's question there about digital divide, yes, of course, there is a very major digital divide, and age is one of the important parts, but you know, it's there also in terms of culture, in education, in income, rural, urban areas, in so many respects. So actually technology can help, but only if you are very serious about overcoming that divide. And that has not been the case so far. There are other forces that are much stronger up to this point, using technology for other purposes. So here there has to be, in a way, a fight back, and do use technology in the way that it can to fulfill the opportunities and fight the downsides. And of course the downsides are, you know, we see what happened with regard to the ownership of Twitter, just to give another example the other day. What's going to happen on the US side? Europe takes a very different stance, but we are in this all together. It's a global challenge now, and technology has to be there working for us. So on that issue also then, what is most important to realize the potential of technology in this context? It's of course not possible to say, you know, just one thing. And I believe in the research area that bringing different competencies together is extremely important. A lot has happened in that regard, but still we are not at the point where technology and behavioral and human issues are really connecting. So that's very important in that sphere. When it comes to the market and enterprise, I would say that bringing the connection between policymakers and the business side and the research community is extremely important. The private sector, the market is extremely varied. There are so many different universes out there, and they are moving in different directions. And can we get technology to be discussed, to be a theme, to be connecting industry, industry, government, and academia here? That will also help vis-a-vis business. And on policy, again, I think the theme is the same, that the silos, the way that the turf is still blocking is a tremendous obstacle. It's a factor. And we heard this morning about the comments and the interventions from the policy side. We know that there are real attempts to bring the relevant players around the table. That need to happen if there's going to be real diffusion, real upscaling of the NBS and addressing the real challenges. Well, those are a few observations. Thank you very much. We're well over time. Hope not too late to go out and look at the trees and so forth and talk to them. And take pictures. Yes. Thank you very much.